everything's set up, but I think we should be ready to start now. So I just want to introduce Sabine Matysik. So previously computational chemist at University of Cambridge, PhD, studying molecular interactions. Now works as a management consultant, but still in the kind of field of chemistry, quantum computing. But today she's going to talk actually about far UVC and the benefit of that potentially in preventing infection and pandemics. So I will be excited to know about that. Feel free to ask any questions on the Slido, and then I'll take those at the end. Thank you very much, and I'll give the floor to Sabine.
Cool, thanks Jordan, and thanks to you for your interest. Yes, I'm talking about far UVC today, which is hopefully shining light on dark diseases. But first I want to give you a brief backstory, both of myself and of the project. So I'm Sabine. I grew up in a Christian family. My parents are also scientists. As an example, my grandma has always given and is still giving 10% of her income to her church. So I guess I grew up in a scientific, Christian and altruistic environment, which is, I guess, why I'm here today. Then I went on to study chemistry in Germany and did an Erasmus exchange term here in the UK in Cambridge, where I first got in contact with EA by a very active local EA group in Cambridge. Some of you might know them. I then came back to the UK to actually pursue a PhD in the same group in computational chemistry, and reconnected with some old friends from this EA group and quickly joined the committee and was very active in the space during that time. Afterwards, I joined Define, which is a tech IT consultancy in Germany, and yeah, I'm really happy with my job there because I also get to do some EA work there. I figured out that there were a few other EAs there, which I didn't know about when I joined, so that was really lucky, and we try to spread the word about EA, convince our colleagues to give, and ideally give effectively, learn about different course areas, just spreading the word. And within that EA group, I had the idea that we could use our training budget that we get, which is 1 day per month, that we can use to for our self-development, but also for research projects on an EA-related topic. And with this idea, I went to EAGX Berlin last year and talked to a few people, and yeah, that actually led to a collaboration with Pour de Mont, which is a think tank in Switzerland, and they had an idea to study far UVC technology and do a cost-benefit analysis. They had already done that for a different topic, and we thought, okay, that fits our profile, that's doable with the time that we have, let's do it. And I went back to Define, tried to pitch it to my colleagues, and we actually found a group of 8 people who were associated and helped with the project. And then there was Laurent Bechler from Pour de Mont, and the working student Ellie, who's a medical doctor in Australia, and she also provided really valuable insights from the medical perspective. Okay, so that's how we founded the so-called eLab. So these research projects within my company are called eLab far UVC lamps. So the main area that we work in is that disease transmission is a major problem, as all of us have seen in the COVID-19 pandemic, and we need to find different solutions from attack the problem from different angles. And one solution has recently been proposed by scientists is far UVC light. So we have the spectrum of light irradiated by the sun, and there's UV light, you probably know, UVA, UV, that you protect yourself against with sunscreen, and then there's UVC, so it's very far away from the visible spectrum. And within UVC you have far UVC, which is even further away, so it normally translates to 222 nanometers. That's how it's used at the moment. And scientists have found that this is rapidly disinfecting air without harm to the human body. So normally UV light is causing cancer, deterioration in the skin, and is also harmful to your eyes. And this wavelength seems to not cause harm in humans, which is massive, if true. That would be really a very good potential. So we decided, okay, we're not going to explore the experimental side of things, because that's not something we can do, but we will do a cost-benefit analysis if that technology is actually useful, cost-effective, and should be research funded. So yeah, here's a schematic of how the disinfection works. So in one case, people are exposed to the pathogens, and those that sit under the light cone are much less exposed. And here you have the explanation why UVC is not as harmful. So normal UV radiation will go through several layers of your skin and then find live cells and cause tumors. But the 222 nanometers cannot go through all these layers. They're already absorbed by the first layer, which is dead cells, so there's no risk of cancer there. And the same with the eye. It doesn't go fully into your eye, causing damage, but it's already absorbed by the tear layer, by the water on top of your eye. Good, so now I want to tell you a bit more about our study and our methodology. So when you want to study disease transmission, you have to focus on a set of scenarios where people get infected. So reality is wild and lots of different scenarios happen, so we decided we would focus on restaurants because that's where people can't wear masks and will eat and talk and sit together for quite some time. Then we will talk about offices because people spend a lot of time in the office. And we will talk about waiting rooms because lots of susceptible people will be there. So we might be able to protect vulnerable groups there. And then for each of these environments, we had to find a set of parameters, lots of assumptions there. We could use a lot of COVID research. I wasn't there before COVID, but now we have a lot of data, but also some influenza data and just general assumptions, how large is a normal restaurant in Europe, how many people are there, for how long, all these kinds of parameters we have to set. And then we put them all into Chimera, which is a model developed by the CERN, the particle accelerator in Switzerland. And they developed this model during COVID to protect their own employees, but it turned out to be a really good software. So it's still used, and even the WHO has now written their own tool based on Chimera. It's called Area. Really good software coming out of a need. And additional to all these parameters for the environments, we also had to think about what kind of diseases we are modeling. So how many people would be infected, depending on the severity of the problem. So we also focused on the normal winter, where people are having colds, flus, nothing that is, to most people it's not fatal, it's just a nuisance. To some elderly and vulnerable people it can still be a threat. And then we also focused on something COVID-like. On one wave that lasts 4 weeks, lots of people are infected, and the characteristics are similar to COVID in terms of mortality and hospitalization rates. And thirdly, we also wanted to study something that is more severe than COVID, because potential pandemics might be more severe. And there, a wave would last 8 weeks, and mortality would be higher, and hospitalization rates would be higher. Something like non-COVID would be more probable. And finally, we also had to somehow model the land, because they're not yet properly on the market, so we translated them into air changes per hour, which is something a ventilation system would normally supply, or HEPA filtration system would also supply, based on scientific studies that have been done for UVC. That's the Chimera tool. So if you download it and use it on your computer, that would be the interface. So you can type in how large is your room, are people wearing masks. Here comes in the ventilation, so that's where we put in our efficacy of the lungs. And then how many people are there, how many are infected, how long do they stay there. And then it will calculate how likely it is that people will get infected, or the number of infections that will occur in this particular scenario. So we have all our assumptions, and then with the tool we calculate the number of infections. And by calculating with and without lamps, we could calculate the number of avoided infections if we had lamps in these scenarios. So then we're here in my flowchart. And from this we can then scale this up. How often do these scenarios occur during the wave or during the winter? And then, based on our assumptions for hospitalization, for mortality, for long COVID, we could then calculate the cost savings for the healthcare system, the economic productivity gains by people not getting sick and not missing work. And thirdly, intangible benefits in terms of quality of life. Of course, it's always nice not to get sick. So yeah, this can be quantified in qualities. If people die, that's obviously much larger, but definitely contributed to the benefits as well. And then we sum everything up, and yeah, I will show you a few of our results. So it's definitely cost effective. We have a lot of assumptions, so we could be wrong here, but I doubt that we're so far off that it's not cost effective. So I'm quite certain that it is cost effective because these lamps are not very expensive to manufacture and they don't use a lot of energy. So given our initial assumption that they're not harmful to humans, this seems to be a very, very good technology. Both during a normal winter and during our pandemic scenarios. So I think this is quite a big result that even now, even this winter, we could have extremely good results if we had these lamps in our restaurants or offices. So for example, in a normal winter we calculated that every person in Switzerland would avoid 2.4 sick days if all restaurants, all offices and all waiting rooms had vitamin D. Or if some restaurants and offices had that, the person who would go there would then avoid 2.4 sick days, which to me is appealing. I would like to have fewer days where I'm sick and lying in bed with a headache. Of course, in the COVID-like pandemic, this would even be even better. The net benefits, as we calculated, would be about 19 billion Swiss francs. So yeah, extremely a lot. That being said, we didn't account for proper infection models like these SRI models, where you take how many susceptible people are there, how many are infected. We didn't do that, so these are to be taken with some caution, but in that ballpark, I think would be a reasonable guess. And finally, we also compared it to HEPA filtration, because that's something that already exists that you could use today, and there's not a lot of negative policy thoughts about HEPA filtration. That's something you can just use. But we found it to be similarly effective, if not better. And these HEPA filters are usually quite noisy, especially if you use them at high throughput. That's something you might not want in your office. And the lamps also use less energy. So also from a sustainability perspective, the lamps seem to be a good choice if you care about the environment. Right, so finally I want to tell you about the way forward. So we've now done our study, cost-benefit, experimental side. What we definitely want to see is more real-world trials, feasibility studies, and safety studies. So I believe it's a good technology, but I'm not 100% sure. It seems that the cancer risk is actually quite low, but there are other risks. For example, there's nothing on allergies and how it affects your skin microbiome if you're constantly irradiated with this. There's nothing on vulnerable groups like children or elderly or whoever is especially susceptible to UV radiation. So this needs to be studied. It could also be studied on animals. If you care about animal welfare, there's some ideas that you could use it to protect the pig farm or chicken farm, because they are also prone to airborne diseases. So this is also something that could be studied in the future. So I'd definitely like to see more of these studies. Another thing that we vouch for is to, in general, monitor indoor air quality better. Because what we found in our literature research is that it's really tricky to find data on how ventilated are UK restaurants. Like that's not something that is written down, or how much CO2 is in your average office. There's some suggestions, but it's not something that is studied very well. So we should study that better and then identify problem areas where UVC could help, or even other forms of protecting against viruses and improving indoor air quality. We also see a lot of potential in the state. So if the state would act, or federal governments would act as role models and implement fire UVC in their buildings, or use, monitoring their indoor air quality better, then that would be a good role model position that they're in. And they are also the standard setter. So if we want to change policy, we need them to adapt the exposure limits, to acknowledge that fire UVC might not be harmful compared to other UV radiation. And finally, we also would like to see critical infrastructure equipped with fire UV if it proves to be unharmful, especially in sight of pandemic preparedness. And it's likely that we will see another severe pandemic in the next 25 years. So it would be good if we were prepared. And fire UV, in my opinion, provides a solution that is independent of other supply chains. So it's completely a different technology compared to vaccines or masks. It's just good to diversify your response portfolio, in my opinion, so that if something goes wrong in one supply chain, you can still use the other one. And we also put this down in a theory of change schematic that you might know from other EA topics. I've definitely come across theory of change talk in EA. So our input is research and information, so our study would come into the flow, and then we would want to see some output, so more monitoring, for example, public administration looking at this. Then there would be some outcome, where people actually implement UV, actually invest in UVC lamps, and finally there would be impact in the sense of healthier and more resilient communities, and individuals protected from infectious diseases and a better preparedness for future pandemics. So that was quite a fast run through this topic. If you want to learn more about our methodology and our results, we published a white paper on the Podemont website and a teaser on both the Podemont and the Define website, so you can scan this URL, hopefully, this QR code, to find the study. And finally, I also want to mention a lot of external advisors that have helped us with this study. So I think, because I'm a chemist, I don't have a proper virology or something background. So most of my colleagues had different backgrounds as well. And Podemont is more on the policy side, so they also didn't have a biological background. So these advisors were really, really helpful, telling us more about pandemics, pandemic spread, how UVC actually tackles the viruses, the pathogens, about the reality in hospitals, for example, the Swiss Center for Occupational and Environmental Health, or the Cantonal Hospital of Aarau. And then we also had some EA connections with the International Center for Future Generations, or Blueprint Biosecurity. Maybe you know some of these organizations. It's just been really, really good that they agreed to help us. That being said, I got a slight impression that the fire UVC community is a bit of a bubble, and policymakers also see that as a problem. So some of the people who publish papers on this also hold patents, so there's a bit of bias potential. So we definitely need more studies from different peoples and input from a lot of sources to get this off the ground. Alright, with that I want to thank my team. So here are the people from Define and Podemont who work together. And I also want to thank you for your attention, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
So I'll just kind of go through some more popular ones. I did actually have a question someone else put on there. So how exactly do you convert this into air changes? That seems like that might be a big effect on your results. So like, as you say, you model it as like increasing the number of air changes. I'm just kind of curious like how you do that calculation.
Yeah, so that was the most mathematical part of our study. So there was experimental evidence where they had a small chamber and they had a constant influx of virus material and constant irradiation, and they measured the changes in viruses per volume unit, and then that was converted into larger volumes, and then you could say the area where, or the volume where viruses were killed, that is clean air.
Right. So instead of removing the virus,
Yeah.
you're killing the virus, but it's equivalent.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Yeah, well, plenty
That
of
is then an air change.
Right.
Maybe it would be worth noting here that far UVC doesn't change other parameters of what you would consider clean air. So there's no removal of CO2, of ozone, whatever. It's just pathogens.
Yeah. It's various questions. One of them was, actually following on from that. So, okay, what's the mechanism of action? Why does it kill the pathogens and not harm humans? I think you kind of went into that.
Yeah, so I went into why it doesn't harm humans. But for pathogens, there are two ways how it will inactivate them. One is that it destroys the surface proteins, which are actually the way how they are infectious. So if they can't dock where they're normally docking with their surface proteins, then they're not infectious anymore. The virus is not dead, but it's not infectious. And it's also destroying DNA and RNA, so then it's actually killing off pathogen.
I guess the reason it doesn't do the same to human cells is just got more protective kind of layers of skin and so on.
Because of these dead layers of skin, that's our protection. Or clothing.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Let me think. Another question on 2.4 days of sick day. I guess someone says that seems quite high. How many days, like how many 6 days does the average person take? I guess that might depend a bit.
Yeah, so in Switzerland I think we found 9 days of sick leave is an average value.
Right. How many of those days are caused by airborne? I don't know, like, if I think about how many sick days I think you have reasonably healthy, like, some of them would be from like flus and viruses, but like not loads of them. Also, per capita means obviously children included in that calculation, and old people who don't work. I don't know, so it's even like.
Care about them.
They don't have sick days, right? They may get ill, they don't have sick days.
That's definitely a restriction, so or limitation of our assumption. So we took the whole population, and the Statistical Institute of Switzerland had this 9-day number published, but it's not resolved into where these come from.
Okay.
So I don't know how many of those stem from airborne diseases. That's a good question.
I feel it's like the majority of what we normally consider sick days probably are airborne pathogens. However, probably a lot of them come from like people taking extended sick leave, like a small number of people taking a lot of sick leave, probably.
I think that is a strong dependence with the age group.
Yeah.
Like, I think in our age group, airborne diseases contribute quite a lot to these sick days, but for like 50 plus, this might be completely different.
Yeah,
So
actually it's probably what it is.
It's to be taken with a pinch of salt.
Yeah. I think you're saying kind of the exact numbers maybe don't matter too much. It does seem like it's worthwhile with such numbers, but yeah, it's always hard to put exact numbers on. There's a lot of questions about, I guess, kind of people who are interested in my personal views. I don't know if that's available commercially, but like, do you think cost-benefit analysis is like justifies like even using it in your own home, or do you think that's?
So a lamp would cost about $1,500 at the moment. One lamp.
One lamp.
One lamp.
Okay.
Depending how large your room is, you would need more than one. And apparently there's a very long wait time. So we considered buying one, but then didn't. But yeah, apparently there's a long wait time because there's really only one manufacturer for the actual lamp component in Japan, Ushio. And then there are some other distributors who then build the casing and the quartz filters who only let through one wavelength and all this.
Yeah, so are there actually places that are using these lamps already, or is it just kind of a theory thing?
No, so everything that I've shown is in that form allowed in the EU, in the European Union and in the UK as well. In the US there would even be a higher exposure limit, so they would allow for even more lamps per room, so to say. There's a Danish manufacturer, UV Medical, and they're actually selling their lamps, and they have a few showcases. So apparently there's a cafe in Copenhagen where you can go and they have these lamps in their cafe. There's a waiting room in a hospital in Copenhagen that tries to protect their patients and people who wait in the waiting room, maybe accompanying a patient. And apparently they've also sold a lot of lamps to, I forget, some kind of Middle Eastern country for their schools. So there are a lot of fewer regulations.
Yeah.
So you just need to convince someone who's in charge. But they are in use in the US. I think they're also in use by various companies. But it's
we just don't have great data on how much impact that's having.
Yeah, it's really a problem of manufacturing them at the moment, and also people being skeptical about UV light. There's a question there as well.
Yeah, sure.
Just to follow on from this, I don't know if there's an opportunity in terms of research looking at, let's say during the COVID pandemic when everyone was stopping mixing and we had this kind of like backlash of increased flu afterwards and airborne infections. What would happen if all of our, let's say schools, hospitals had this kind of technology, but then we go out to one particular place where there's not, and then suddenly we're so vulnerable to everything. And in the same way in terms of like commensals on our skin. Could this be a negative thing actually?
This could be a negative thing, definitely.
I would imagine commensals on our skin are presumably UV resistant because we go outside, but that would probably be something to do.
That's something that is really not studied at
Yeah,
all.
okay.
So far, so
So,
But I wouldn't vouch for implementing them everywhere.
Actually, would sunlight include this type of UV light?
Yes.
Okay, so it is. But it's just
It's much more essential, otherwise all bacteria in the air, all respiratory
Yeah. It would be much more than sunlight,
Okay.
And you take measures to protect yourself from sunlight by applying sunscreen, going to the shade, wearing hats, I don't know. So,
I guess kind of a somewhat more personal question was asked was kind of like, how can other people sort of follow your example? Maybe not in terms of this specific issue, but like, ways to have an idea. I should go from like, this would be an interesting thing to look into, to like actually organising a team, getting together, doing this project. Like, any advice on people who maybe have their own ideas and aren't really doing anything with them yet?
So definitely come to this type of conference. So you've already done a good thing. Because as I said, we found our collaboration partner at one of these EA conferences. So I think in the EA community, people are very open to collaborating. So just speaking to other people, other organizations, pitching your idea. That was, I think, what did the trick for me. I was kind of the project manager for this, so that I had to constantly maintain a certain degree of motivation and motivating others to push through. So that can also sometimes be necessary. But I guess
it helps to like, that it wasn't you on your own, that maybe like having other people involved in it with you kind of helped motivate each other?
Not very much. So we had a kind of a tricky period between January and March maybe of this year. So we started in November and were finished by August, September. And then in March, one of the team members had some additional momentum, which really helped finish it off. So and then I guess the contact to all these external advisors was really rewarding to me and really interesting. And I really wanted to not disappoint all of them and bring a good product. So I guess having this external accountability always helps.
So kind of tell other people about the project, get other people involved, and get it started, and you have a motivation to finish. Let me just have a look. There's plenty of questions. Some of them kind of overlapping.
One thing I was wondering is like, what are the dangers of it? It's like, how sure are we that it doesn't hurt humans, for example? Is it like?
So there are quite a few papers now on UVC. They mostly use artificial skin, which supposedly models are very well. I think there are some models on pig skin, which is also apparently quite close to human skin, and then some shaved mice. And then there were some researchers who exposed themselves, so they don't have to go through an ethics statement if you just expose yourself. So they really exposed themselves for a long time and didn't see any redness or rash or anything. But yeah, there have not been any large-scale trials on humans who are actually exposed.
At least selling the lamps now, so in 5 years we know.
Yes. There is a certain extent if the lamps are causing serious problems, then we will know about them quite quickly, even if that's not the most scientific approach.
Oh, I mean, it is part of the human exposed sunlight, so it's not something completely novel. It's just it might be more intense than this part of the artificial ones.
I guess another thing was, you know how widely used HEPA filters are, and like if those can do the same sort of work, like why we're just using HEPA filters more.
They are quite well known. I mean, they're a bit of an investment, but yeah, those you can just buy on the internet without any wait time. Yeah, a good unit will cost you maybe 600 euros, maybe less if it's not if it doesn't have such a high throughput. Yeah, HEPA filtration is well known.
Quite common in air conditioning and stuff like that.
Yeah, you sometimes need to change the filter, but as I said, they make some noise. And the normal filtration systems are obviously also okay. It's just that most old buildings don't have one. Like here, I'm not sure anything apart from the windows is happening.
Yeah, and I imagine it would be presumably easier to put in a UV lamp rather than installing a kind of big filter for the air. So that could be quite useful. I guess question, I think, now you've done this project, do you have any plans to do anything further with it, or are you just going to add any extra plans? Final plans, no, but I'm just curious. I'm curious where you want to go next.
Yeah, so one thing I'll do is definitely follow up any questions and emails that will reach me. So we've already had some things that came out of the study. So there was a US manufacturer of like handheld devices that really wanted us to do another study of their device. Maybe not, but we can of course help them, maybe find a European partner or something like that. So I'll see if people are interested. I've also considered applying for an LV fellowship. I don't know if you've heard about that. It's also by the Johns Hopkins University, and I think it's something leadership in biosecurity fellowship, which would connect me to a lot more people in the biosecurity space. I'm not sure if I have a lot of chances because my background is kind of off and I only have this study to show, but anyway, I might try.
Yeah, actually, I was curious, kind of, what do you actually, what do you actually do with it once you have the report together? How do you kind of let people know about it? And publications?
Yeah, we did a LinkedIn post.
Okay.
Yeah, we published it internally or announced it internally within CFI, and Podemont also has a newsletter that they send out to their partners. Now here, we also presented it at EAGX Berlin this year.
Okay.
Yeah, so conferences, and we also submitted it to an actual journal. So let's see if it gets accepted or not. And I think we will also continue to apply to present it at academic conferences. Yeah, and then Podemont, who is more on the policy side, I think they will approach policymakers and Swiss government and stuff like that with our study. I think they're already doing that at the moment, but they will continue to do so.
Actually, that was sorry, we've got a bit more time. So, the question on kind of, because you're following on from that, kind of trying to get it in the academic context. Question was, how do you view the role of kind of academia in I guess EA contribution to academia? I guess why did you decide to pursue kind of research rather than some other use of your time, I suppose?
Yeah, because I'm convinced of EA, and the alternative would have been to just work more in my day-to-day job, or have more free time, or like use this training budget for, I don't know, some IT certificate that would only benefit me. So I thought it would be a better use of my time and of my colleagues' time to do an EA project. I'm hoping that we can do more of these, maybe something in the area of AI safety, because a lot of my colleagues are very knowledgeable with AI. So that's something our local EA group within DeFi tries to continue.
Be very interested to hear any results of that next year or however long it takes. And just any other questions people want to ask, feel free to raise your hand. And in that case, thank you very much. Oh, sorry.
I mean, you don't think that I'm really interested about this bubble thing because you mentioned it from the inside of the bubble. And this worries me generally about some of the EA stuff, like the AI extinction risks, which also seems bubbling.
Yeah.
And so, how seriously do you take and do you have any idea how to solve this bubble problem? So you say there is this super interesting research community, but it's a bubble. Do you have any countermeasures?
So I feel like we are already part of that countermeasure because I previously didn't know about this bubble, so I was outside and still thought this was interesting. Some of these people, for example, Richard Bruns, I wouldn't consider him part of the bubble, but he's really one of the senior scholars of biosecurity, but didn't really know much about UVC either, and still was keen to discuss it with us. Publishing in scientific papers, journals also helps, I think, when the authors unload those from the bubble. I think just diversifying authors' backgrounds helps a lot.
Yeah, that makes sense. Getting involved in the research would be good if you're not sure if there's anything there that you need to go get external.
And of course, conducting critical studies. One of my team members, Marwan, he was always very skeptical at the beginning, especially we didn't include schools as one of the environments because we really didn't feel comfortable with exposing children first, even if it's only in our study and not in actual reality. So
you think that maybe was helpful, even if you haven't found any effect, you think probably still would have gone ahead and told people about your findings and weren't kind of biased because you had that skepticism.
Talk about your skepticism, exactly, being on the conservative side of things with your assumptions. Yes.
Any further questions I might have missed? If not, thank you very much for a great talk.